All right, Joel Gausten here from joelgausten.com. Welcome to 2024. If you're watching this, it means that you made it through another year. So congratulations on that. Starting off the year with what I'm sure is going to be a great conversation. I'm very, very excited to be joined by somebody I haven't talked to in
20 years.
20 years. Yeah, at least 20.
Something like
And
that.
you're actually contacting me from 16 hours rather into the future.
I am in the future. And I can
Yes.
tell you that the future is it's quite sunny. It's about 78 degrees. It's nice. Um, and it will rain in the future. This
Yes.
is my message to you, Earthlings, from the future. But
Well, all the way from Sydney, Australia, Mr.
indeed,
Chris Haskett. Chris, thanks for joining me, man.
it is a pleasure and happy new year to everybody.
Absolutely.
Depending on when you watch this, happy old year, whatever.
Yes, happy 2056 for all we know. But
Yeah.
but anyway, there's a lot of things always kind of going on with you musically, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on.
Mhm.
And of course, you've had a great history leading up to the present. So I figured we'd start at the most natural spot, which is the beginning. Um, you're originally a DC guy, right?
I am a DC guy. So yes, indeed. I'm so DC that Ian Mackay and Henry Rollins and I are all contemporaries. So the kind of nascent that the nascent little scene that spawned, including also, and we're also and the same with HR, with Bad Brains. You know, we're all the same. We're all from the same tiny community of people at the same time. You know,
What came first, your interest and eventual um, playing guitar, or meeting up with those guys?
um, Oh, probably interested in playing guitar because I mean I was, and I've taken an informal poll of many of my colleagues, whenever I meet like, usually a guitar player that I really admire and I feel kind of kinship with. One of the things I always ask her then is like, when you were a kid, could you dance? And they all say, no, that's why I play guitar. So no, I was definitely the misfit, outsider, goofy, um, totally just the most uncool kid ever. Um, and but I'm unfortunately I have a very uh, nice older brother who has impeccable taste in music. So growing up, I kind of globbed onto my 5-year older brother and his friends in their music. So, you know, when when my when my classmates were listening to Seals and Crofts, I was listening to like Lou Reed and Stones, and it was my way out. So guitar playing definitely was my way. It helped me find a different social sphere because I didn't fit in kind of straight world even in junior high school. It just didn't work. So
Was the Enzymes your first proper
that was
band?
my first real band. Yeah, I was really lucky. I was also fortunate because my parents were both academics. My dad was English, and it just so happened that they both took sabbaticals at the same time, and we went back to where my dad was from, which is the north of England, in 1976. So 76 to 77, I was in England,
Uh,
right? And I'd taken my guitar with me, and a couple of things happened simultaneously. I mean, being an adolescent is just horrible, no matter who you are. Usually, I think it was for me, most people I know. But it allowed me to go to a place where I was suddenly exotic, right? And I kind of was kind of reinvented. All of a sudden, instead of being like the nerdy, weird outsider that everybody thought was goofy and kind of creepy, I was like interesting, right? It's like, oh my God, because I was up in the north of England, totally working class coal mining district. Um, and it was, and I globbed onto the kids that also were into guitar and Bowie and T-Rex, and just kind of made friends with the music people. Came back in 1977, the age of 14, having been, playing guitar for a year or so, and kind of like, and punk rock was happening. All of a sudden, you didn't need to be, John McLaughlin or Jerry Garcia or whatever. You could just, you know, and I got into my very first ever gig. So I came back to go backwards. I came back with much more self-confidence, and just to kind of like, I had an alternative world to the one that I wasn't in. I was like, oh, there's a whole world of music and people that do really cool stuff out there. And I started going to gigs, and one of the first gigs I went to was a Fred Frith gig, right? So he's doing, totally avant-garde, improvisational, prepared guitar, and that gig, that was one of the seminal gigs. The other seminal gig was when the B-52s used to come up from Athens and play. Again, you'd see the same 5 people. It's a bit like, in the Filth and the Fury documentary, where, they're talking about the early days of punk and the early days of Sex Pistols. You'd see the same 5 people at all these gigs, and eventually you see the same 10 people, then you see the same 20 people. So at the Fred Frith gig, I'm approached by a guy I kind of know, introduced me to a friend of his, and the guy, we're talking, he's like, we're talking about like Brian Eno and stuff. He says, would you like to be a guitar unit in the Enzymes? I'm like, yeah, I'd love to be a guitar unit in the Enzymes, right? So I had no idea what it meant, but it was, yeah, that was my first band. And I am a bit verbose. You can edit this part down, but no, but what I was gonna say, one of the things that's really interesting that a lot of people miss, especially if they weren't there at the very, very beginning, and this is certainly true in Washington, and I think it was probably true in a bunch of the other places where you got that kind of critical mass of individuality and weirdness and opportunity that give rise to these little municipal scenes, sometimes rural, but mostly municipal. Well, but it was that, you'd see the same people at the Fred Frith gig that you would see at the Damned, right? But you would also see them at the Art Ensemble of Chicago, and you'd also see them at Sun Ra, right? And you'd also see them at like the avant-garde hippie synth show. So there was a much broader continuum of what constituted our menu of alternative music, all our possibilities. So for me, my first band, really, I mean, we were the Damned, the Buzzcocks, P-Funk, and Sun Ra. Disco 3000 was like the big record for the Enzymes, along with the second Damned album, right? So it's interesting. I think it's just an important marker to put down, because so much of what happened later is partially because of that beginning, but it's not really evidenced in it. When you listen to like Rollins Band, you wouldn't imagine that like Henry is totally into like Albert Ayler, right? And you wouldn't think that we were listening to like huge amounts of P-Funk, right? But it's there, and it informs what we did, So that was a short answer.
Excellent. Well, specifically with the Enzymes, I know David Byers, the late David Byers, was in the band with you. I believe Chuck Rosen as well was involved.
Craig Rosen. So actually, to put things straight, he wasn't in the band with me. I joined his band. That was David and a guy called John Gibson, and Craig Rosen, and a bunch of John's like socialist friends from the Young Socialist Alliance. So I came in as the newcomer. They were an existing band. They'd already been doing stuff. So it's more just the accident that David passed away, and that version of the Enzymes didn't release anything in its lifetime. But I went on to do stuff. People could look back and go, "Oh, Chris was in the Enzymes. It must have been his band," but it wasn't. It wasn't my band. And it was definitely David's thing, and but yeah, that was a really fun band to be in. And allegedly, and I haven't been talking about it a lot just because I didn't want to put pressure on, but now to hell with it, put pressure on. Ian is supposed to be putting together a double-sided record, one side of which is the first Enzymes record, and he's been telling me about this for like 4 years, right? So at one point I had Henry, who's doing the liner notes, sending me like, I need all this information like right now. So I sent Henry all this information like right now. And that was like a year ago. So it's like, Ian, come on, please put this record out someday, and then people can hear it, because it's that first, when the Enzymes started out as a very avant-garde unit, and it kind of, after the Bad Brains became more prominent, everybody suddenly just their game changed. So the Enzymes became much more a kind of straight punk and reggae band. But that first session with Lawrence Goodby, we had a guy, we had our own Brian Eno. We had a guy who, made his own oscillators and stuff. And just, we made him join the band because he made these machines that go, and so he was in there, and we just doing totally improvisational stuff sometimes, as well as the punk and the reggae. And it was fun. But anyway, sorry.
That session, was that the Spanish food tape?
Yeah, it was like, again, it was all kind of anarchic. Where Spanish food tour came out, I think that was something Byers found in a newspaper and went on the flyer, and then it just stayed. So yeah, that was a session where we did a kind of iconic song called Speed Wash.
Yeah.
Which the lyrics were just the instructions off of a laundromat. Because I mean that was something that also I was really lucky about, because like that anarchic joy of just being in a band with guys who are like, yeah, man, let's do a song, and the lyrics will be the instructions for the Speed Queen, was really cool, rather than being like, starting out with something that was incredibly rigid and straight-laced. I was really lucky to be with, guys my age who were just more musically mature, who had much more, a much greater sense of freedom. So, to quote James Brown, it got me off on the good foot, especially because and also to be fair, like their musical knowledge was much broader than mine. I was still really, I was into Bowie a lot, and T-Rex, but I was still also listening to like the Dead and the Allman Brothers and stuff, which I still do. I still love it, but I knew who Sun Ra was, and I knew like I Love Supreme and my favorite things, but I'd never listened to like Sunship or Africa Brass. And to suddenly be in a world where like, the guys in the band are like, hey, we're going to see World Saxophone Quartet. You coming? I'm like, oh, okay, which I just feel, with hindsight, it was just such a blessing, and that's really, that's down to a lot of, I should really talk to John Gibson, because a lot of that was really down to him, and he's very uncredited, I think. And he did a lot of really cool music in DC after the Enzymes as well. But anyway,
well,
onward.
Staying on DC for a moment.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, we all love the Teen Idols and Discord and SOA and all that stuff. But I wanted to talk to you about a musical scene in DC that's almost, well, it really is exclusive to DC. And that's the whole go-go scene.
Oh, absolutely.
I have this deep fascination with. I sometimes do a podcast with my friend Drew Stone called the New York Hardcore Chronicles. Just had Johnny Temple on from
from Akashic, sure,
right, and we got into deep diving into go-go.
Sure.
And obviously I got to ask you, because you were kind of ground floor for that as well.
Yeah.
What kind of impact did go-go have on your musical development?
Well, huge. Well, a couple of things. I mean, again, go-go, when I was like, go-go really hit my consciousness right as I was leaving Washington. So like, there's a lot of things in Washington that a lot of people know about. So it's like the Washington Monument and the Jefferson Memorial and the Capitol stuff. And there's a guy called Tom Berard, right? Tom Berard is a Washington institution on a par with the fucking Smithsonian. And he is a lovely human being, and B, he's like a walking archive of music, especially DC music, but kind of, he's got like 5 copies of every color vinyl of almost any record you could think of. And he was the first person I knew back then, this would be probably about 1980, 79 or 80, who was buying, like, dropped all the early Trouble Funk 12 inches. Because I mean, Trouble Funk were the first ones that got on our radar. So it's like Drop the Bomb and Don't Touch That Stereo. And they were just the 12 inches. So I initially got into that just as I was leaving for college. And then whenever I'd go back, I'd tape whatever was new. So that was a really early EU, and I think Rare Essence might have been a little bit, my experience of Rare Essence was a little bit later. But my awareness of go-go, yeah, I mean, ever since, I mean, it's addictive. It is one of the coolest uses of the clave beat ever. Yeah. You know, and it's still, I mean, I live in Australia. I have a crappy old internet radio with like 10 presets. 2 of them are go-go shows. So, you know, but it grew on me more later, because also go-go, changed. I mean, I started getting into, I was always into go-go. It's just, I dug it and stuff, but it really started to really become, I don't know, it really completely got me even more when it slowed down, right? And that's with pretty much with like Run Joe, the Chuck Brown song. And when go-go started to slow down, so they go through different iterations. You know, I don't even know where they are now with, after like the invention of bounce, because you got the fast go-go, you got like, and then you got this kind of slowed down, heavier, funky, like 80 BPM go-go, and then it's moved into bounce beat and a bunch of other stuff. But I still, yeah, it's funny. I'm not in any way, you know, nationalist or patriotic or anything, but I still feel go-go is really, it's the most Washington thing about me. I think it's my love of go-go, you know, and yeah, I mean, it is compelling. And what's also really interesting is it's one of the few holdouts of a completely local kind of indigenous culture in America, because America is such a mobile place. You know, there's, I think that, again, what you had house music out of Chicago, right? Originally, that's right. Chicago and Detroit, or just Chicago, I don't remember. But and there's different, and like drill and stuff, which is I think mostly out of Atlanta originally. I mean, there's different. So there are different kinds of music that originate and are identified with places, but they're not so idiosyncratic as go-go is. I mean, there's nothing. What? It's just weird. Like, you know, nobody else plays anything like that anywhere else.
Right.
You know, where you'll get people imitating drill everywhere because it becomes a style and people adopt it. The go-go band thing, the fact that you've got like 4 or 5 bands playing every weekend within this tiny locality, right? It's as far as I know, fairly unique. You know.
Yeah, definitely. About 11 or 12 years ago, I went to a big show at the 930 Club in DC.
Mm-hmm.
And it was billed as like go-go punk spectacular or something. You know,
Oh, it was like the reunion of the Trouble Funk. Yeah. Was it the anniversary of the Trouble Funk Minor Threat show?
It was, I don't think it was, I think it was tied in with a documentary or an art show
Okay.
going on at the time. I
Okay.
just came down for the show at the 930, but you know, and Henry actually emceed it. But they had like it was like, you know, punk / hardcore band, go-go band, punk hardcore. So it was
Yeah.
like, you know, Youth Brigade followed by the Junkyard Band, Scream
How
followed
old are
by
the guys in Youth Brigade?
not so Youth Brigade, yeah.
Yeah, but still, but anyway, you know.
But it was wild, and Trouble Funk closed the show,
Yeah.
and they kept it going for
Yeah.
well over an hour. Just you know, it was that beat.
Yeah, sure. You know, I remember seeing I went to a Public Enemy at the old 930 Club, right? You know, again, which held like, you know, it was legally held like 170 people. And of course, it's wall to wall, and it's Washington, and it's PE, right? And they're doing the thing. And Chuck Brown goes, "Hey man, how come if go-go so young, nobody listens to it but you guys?" And the room just went completely quiet. It's like, you don't even joke about that here, right? I don't care who you are. You don't. It's like, no, that was meant to be a joke. Yeah. I was like, you know, how come they listen? Yeah, no, we got it. But yeah, it's funny, and you know, I like I said, I still listen to it. I still listen to a lot of go-go, though I have to say my taste for it is more, you know, is a bit more old school. This is the same with like a lot. 60, nearly 62 years old. Everything about me is more old school. So I'm a grumpy old man. But it's like, you know, when the bands had to get smaller, when they couldn't afford to keep full horn sections, you know, and it's a lot of stuff's more on synth, and also it's a lot of just playing that just relentlessly open hi-hat, which just swamps everything. I like the older, tighter, really heavier stuff, me personally, but you know, what do I know?
Well,
Yeah.
next in your journey was Leeds, England.
Yeah. Next, yeah, well, it kind of, I was a Vassar girl for 2 years in Poughkeepsie. And I played some music there, but nothing that anybody, it was good. It was a good formative thing. I had a band there that almost never played, but we rehearsed a lot. So it allowed me to like prepare a bunch of ideas, and kind of find a voice or refine a voice of something that I was hearing inside. And a lot of that stuff ended up on the first record I made with Henry, which was in Leeds. So that a lot of that aesthetic came from there. But yeah, but moving on to Leeds. Yes, I moved to Leeds after 2 years at Vassar, and got into a surf trash band. Kind of like cross between Jonathan Richman and the Replacements, Yeah, oh, it's good. No, it was Surfing Dave and the Absent Legends. It was great. So we had the front man looked like Phil Silvers from Sergeant Bilko, and he had a very limited vocal range, and he had to play the guitar with one finger. So there was something kind of already integrally naive and kind of charming and limited about it. And that was that was my introduction to touring. So I actually started doing a lot of shows in England with that band. And some cool supports. I mean, we played with Billy Bragg a lot back in his early days, and John Otway, stuff like that. And that was the first couple of times I toured Europe was actually with Surfing Dave. So that before I was playing with Henry. In fact, when I started working with Henry, I was still in Surfing Dave. And that was, like I say, it's music that's really fun for me to play. And as a guitarist, I love writing like surf instrumentals. I mean, it's like, so there was a fun little kind of side route, which we actually still work on. I'm actually finishing a record with these guys like 25 years later. But yeah, and Leeds was an interesting place at that point because it's, for the listeners that do not know, Leeds is an industrial city in the north of England. And by north, I mean, if you look at a map of England, it's actually dead center. But, once you get 13 miles north of London, it's called the North. And it's always been a very fertile place. So that's, the big exports before I got there were Gang of Four and Soft Cell, right? Those are both. Soft Cell were actually more recent. I think Mark Almond was actually still around when I first got there, but Soft Cell were already huge. I mean, they're already a massive band. But the big exports at that point were Gang of Four, and there were some amazing other bands. Delta 5 were originally from there. The Mekons were from there. So if you're from Chicago, Langford. Yeah. I mean, he was a fixture when I lived there, and well, so there was a bunch of other bands, but yeah, Leeds, it was a good place because it had, it was, I finished university there. When you went to university and you were in England and it was 1984, nobody was going to get a job. Unemployment was like 14%. So, these are the Thatcher years. This is so there was this kind of, in the same way that you kind of they said the same sort of thing in New York in the 70s and 80s, there was this kind of like post-industrial wasteland where you could just find spaces and just go do stuff. But there was better state supports who were all in the dole because I'm a British subject, so I could sign on. In fact, when I was in Surfing Dave, we used to have to time our tours so that you never tour for more than 2 weeks at a time. So we always had to leave the day after the afternoon that you signed on for the dole. You had to go sign for every 2 weeks, and then be back. And I have this strong memory of like me and the bassist who went on to be. Do you remember the band Utah Saints?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, half of you. So the Jez from Utah Saints was the bass player in Surfing Dave.
Oh, no kidding.
I remember the strong memory of he and I trying to, having been awake for like 30 hours, taking turns driving like 5 miles each on the motorway and then pulling over and swapping in order to get the van back. So we didn't have to pay the extra 12 pounds for 1 hour of being late and go sign on. I mean, it was just insanity. But it was a good place. It was a good place to be in a band, Leeds. Yeah. Sorry. So I'll let you insert a question here now we've gotten to Leeds.
Well, as you said, the initial recordings you did with Henry,
yeah,
those were done out in Leeds. I know Lifetime.
They were. And so was Lifetime, yeah. So the way that worked was I was living there. I was living in the UK, but my folks and my brother and my wife were still in DC, so I used to come back. So I came back the year after I finished college. The summer after I finished college. I came back for a visit, and Henry's from DC, so he happened to be in DC, and we're hanging out. And I don't remember exactly I mean, I think we've been hanging out. I think he just called me, and we had been swapping tapes and stuff, and swapping ideas since '84. To '84, when they came to Leeds, they all stayed at my house anyway, right? So '84. So yeah, so then Leeds, and now we're talking about end of '86. I think it must be maybe '87, '86. I don't know. So it can't have been when I just finished college. Anyway, edit this bit. Anyway, so after the '86 tour, so Henry's at home. He's at his mom's place out in suburban Virginia. I'm in DC. We're hanging out, because we've always been very simpatico. I mean, long before we were in a band together, we just, he was an Enzymes fan. We liked a lot of the same music, and we're just, he's funny, and like I said, it was a small scene. Everybody knew each other, so we would always be. If we were in the same place, we'd always hang out. And so I remember, he called me up. We've been, talking, just hanging out and stuff. And I think he called me up, and I guess he said, "Look, I'm out of Black Flag." It was something along the lines of, "I'm not in Black Flag anymore. I just heard from Ginn. Write some songs, find some guys, book some studio time. Let's make a record." That was pretty much it. That's again, benefit of hindsight from 40 years later, but it was something as concise as that. It really was kind of like, okay, I'm not in Black Flag. Fuck it, I'm gonna call Haskett and we're gonna do something, and that's pretty much. And what it was even weirder than that, because I don't think he fired Henry. I think Greg quit Black Flag.
Right.
It's your band. How's this work? But whatever. I'm not, do what you like. Anyway, so we found a very fine bassist from DC, a guy called Bernie Wandell, who was also in a band called Nuclear Crayons. He's been in a bunch of bands. And we took the drummer from my band in England, from Surfing Dave, Mick Green, who's just got an incredibly great natural swing. I had a bunch of riffs. Henry started writing a bunch of lyrics. We flew Bernie to America, booked a rehearsal room. He brought some riffs. I brought some riffs, and we wrote a record. We wrote Hot Animal Machine. And I think it really was like 5 days of rehearsing and then straight into the studio, something like that. Yeah.
And I know when it came time to do Lifetime, obviously Sim and Andrew were on board at that point, and that was the band proper. Ian actually came out to Leeds to produce that.
He produced it. Yeah, we did it at the same studio, a place called Offbeat, and that was funny. So we did, again, we did Hot Animal Machine, but there was no band. There was just me. There's just the record, and I didn't know quite what was going to happen with it. And then I guess Henry called me up and said, "Hey, the guys from got the guys from Dawn or something." I can't remember exactly how it worked, but I flew out to the States and met Andrew and Sim, which I was so nervous. I was like, "Oh my God, these guys are like real musicians," and I remember jamming for the first time on some of the songs in Sim's basement, and but it was very typically Henry at that point. It's kind of like, fly out. We've got a couple of days of rehearsal, and then we've got 6 weeks of tour. Oh, okay. So that first American tour, which was the first time I'd ever toured in America, because that I'd only ever played in DC and Baltimore and stuff. I never toured in the States. That was an interesting one, because again, nobody knew what to expect. That was totally without a net, because everybody knew Henry was from Black Flag, but this wasn't Black Flag, and it wasn't particularly like Black Flag. So it was always a bit of a risk, would people like it, or would they just want what they'd already seen, But and also again, just to reiterate, it's like the kind of a recurrent theme in my musical life has been this almost like Candide like luck of being in a band with people that are really, really good. So sometimes, so I went from being in a band with John Gibson and David Byers, right, to being in a band with Andrew and Sim, right? And also it's like, you're going to look good if you stand still next to them, right? So, it's good. And then later I get to be in a band with Melvin Gibbs. I'm like,
Right.
So it's a kind of like that. There's a theme of like idiot luck of, I can do what I can do, and that's fine. But a lot of that's been, I stand on the shoulders of my colleagues a lot.
Well,
So
I can, share a little bit of personal experience with Andrew, because I spent 18
yeah,
years bouncing in and out of Pigface, which is
yeah,
when I first met back in the day.
yeah,
But in 2019, Andrew showed up. We were playing in New York,
yeah,
and I was going to stay in the city that night, or stay in New York that night.
yeah,
Not really in the city, but I packed an overnight bag before I left, and I
yeah.
just happened to grab like what was nearest, and it was an old Regressive Aid t-shirt, right?
But
So I bring the
it
shirt
still
back.
sounds good,
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah,
So I go to the gig in New York. I got this, got my stuff with me. And Martin's like, Andrew Weiss is playing bass tonight. I guess they had bumped into each other at a flipper show or something like shortly
right.
before. And Andrew hadn't done it in 27 years with Big Face.
Yeah.
So, we're all backstage. I had to show him the shirt. I said, "Hi, I'm Joel. Look at this." So, we kind of hit it off a little bit through that. It was just funny. But he's looking at the set list, and obviously, Waitlist was in the set, and
Yeah,
well, obviously, Suck was on it too.
yeah, yeah.
But the rest of it was like post Andrew for the most part. So
Oh,
it
really?
isn't like he knew the
It's not like
set,
there's a shortage of material,
right? So he didn't know. I would say 95% of it. He played the whole show.
Wow.
Like right on top, wow, 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 the stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
It sounded beautiful, but he just went up there and just did it for an hour and 45 minutes, 2 hours.
Wow.
It was
Yeah.
amazing how just intuitive he was.
Yeah.
And he and I locked in on one of the songs. We're just like eye to eye, just going for
Yeah.
it. He's
Yeah.
playing just
Oh,
beautiful.
that's good. I should. I'm overdue to give him and Sim both a call, actually. So I should definitely check in with him. No, that's wonderful to hear because I don't even know what he's been doing, lately. I assume he's just still doing production. Because he might have been playing with Chris Harford a little bit lately.
I
Yeah.
see that every
With
so
Sim,
often.
I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Band
All
of
right.
Changes. I think that's what they're calling it.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Yeah. And didn't Ween go back out
They
a couple
did.
of years? They did. I don't know if that was with Andrew or not.
I'm not sure actually. I should have looked into that.
Paul. Yeah.
They
But
came through town and I missed the gig, unfortunately.
yeah.
But I mean, obviously we both know Andrew is Andrew, and that's amazing on the bass. What do you think that level of musicality brought to the Rollins band in those earlier years?
Well, I mean, it's interesting. I think, um, candidly, I think when Andrew and Sim first saw me, they were like, okay, this is pretty cool. When can we get rid of this guy? um, because, I mean, I think, it was a bit of a roll of the dice to do the Rollins band. The material wasn't really their native things. I mean, what Henry and I were really into at that moment really was like the birthday party. I mean, you listen to Hot Animal Machine, you know, Prayers on Fire and that Junkyard. It's all over that record, right? It's not, and I actually, like I say, because we'll get to Roland later, but just that aesthetic, that kind of really angular, wiry thing, wasn't what Sim and Andrew naturally were into, but it was a good gig. So they're like, yeah, okay, let's do this. And I remember actually, it's interesting. We did do one Black Flag song early on in the set because we didn't have enough material, and Henry wouldn't do any Ginn songs, right? So we did What I See, which is a Chuck song,
Right.
right? We did that, but we also did, and we did Gates of Steel, Devo,
Hmm.
and the stuff kind of gradually morphed into it started to take more of a natural Andrew and Sim shape. So if you listen to even the stuff from Lifetime that we all worked on together, you listen to the studio version of Burn Beyond Recognition, and then listen to any live version of it. The live versions are like half speed, and they are way heavier, right? because a lot of time, you might it's like Andrew's like, no, it's too slow it down, make it more like and really dig it in, and he was right, but so even in the early days, even with the material that wasn't co-written, the stuff that had been brought to them that wasn't, like I said, their kind of normal kind of métier, right? It started to get shaped more into the Andrew and Sim rhythm shape, and that was a good thing. And then after, after we did, 6 weeks or whatever in America, we got offered 10 weeks in Europe, right? And that's where Lifetime came from. So we were already jamming, and a lot of the writing was coming out of jams. I mean, I'm this kind of endless riff machine, right? I just write riffs. So I used to bring in like, half of a C90 cassette of nothing but riff ideas. And people, most of them would just sit there going, nah, okay, let's try that one. Nah, and it's like, and they were all just seeds to start, because all the music was really was collective, and when we did the 10 weeks in Europe, by the time we've been working on some of the riffs we've been jamming on, that's the material that becomes Lifetime. Yeah. And that's the first real Rollins Band record. And it's much more organic. And yes, and we flew Ian out for that. Again, it was on, everything, Henry was the budget for this, right? None of us had any money. Henry was able to do spoken word gigs and, get a little bit of money here and there. So he was basically bankrolling everything. And, we flew Ian out. He slept on the floor in the top of my house. We all, none of us had any money to eat. And it was good. It was funny because when you're younger and you're in not rival bands, but you're in separate bands, you're always a bit kind of like this with other people. So that's how I'd never really hung out with Ian when we were in DC. I mean, we knew each other, but we were on kind of different, we were on different parallel travelators a little bit. So it wasn't any kind of animus. It was just kind of like I'd never really hung out with him. It was really good being there. I mean, I think he hated it. Not being with us, but just being in like damp, unheated, everything closes early England of 1987. But he did a great job, And what's even funnier, I don't know is if you look on the back of the vinyl version of Lifetime, it says, produced by Ian MacKay in letters like 2 inches high, right? It was so big that he didn't see it, right? So apparently he called Harry and said, hey, the record sounds great. How come, but you didn't put my name on it? And it was like, no, dude, it's the biggest thing on there. It was so large he didn't see it because we wanted to see it produced by Ian MacKay, So, but so that's how that happened. Well, from the next 10,000 words,
Well, to fast forward a little bit, the first time I saw Rollins Band live was Lollapalooza.
Oh, 91. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and the first album I bought of yours was naturally subsequent to that, The End of
Silence. Yeah.
And I know a few years back, Henry put out the demos for that album as an official release. What is your preference between the two versions of The End of Silence?
Tough call. I like them both. My only complaint, and it's now tempered a lot because I've done a lot more production since then. As well as being a musician, I've also been on the producer side of it. Was like when you listen to the song, is it Another Life? Yeah, it's Another Life. There's an entire verse and chorus missing, right? The whole first verse and chorus of Another Life got cut out, right? Which at first I thought it had to be an error, but it was actually deliberate productions because all those songs are so long. So for that reason, I prefer the demos, but to be fair, I mean, it's like the Andy Wallace could have just, he could have burned down the studio and paid for it. It was great. He just, the entire time we were in the studio with him, making End of Silence, was right as Nevermind was charting.
Mhm.
So every day we would come into the studio and Andy Wallace would be like, I just made another Porsche. It's like, it was hilarious. And also to give him also credit with the benefit of hindsight, we were not an easy band to produce at all. Not because we were like dicks, but because we had very strong and not always compatible, but very rigid notions of how the songs should be, right? And how the music should go. You've been in a band with Andrew. Andrew has opinions. And sometimes if you don't agree with those opinions, you're an idiot. On the other hand, half the time he's right, but no, so like when we were doing End of Silence, I had very particular ideas of how I wanted the guitars to be, especially in certain sections. And I'd never heard of Andy Wallace. And who the fuck is this guy? But he was right, so there were I think a lot of the time for him pulling out the record that he did, because it's a great sounding record, I think. And those are really good performances. On the other hand, we were a really good band and we just come off the road. So we were ready. It wasn't like we weren't ready to go play those songs well. But I think he probably had to bite his tongue a lot. And it probably took more pulling to get that record out of us than maybe it should have been. But I mean, in general, I always prefer the demos of things, you always prefer that raw thing. So it's like they always say, the first take is the best, even if it has a mistake, and it's usually true. But and it's cool to, again, I mean, a lot of people, it's cool that Henry's putting this stuff out, because a lot of people put out everything in a completely scattershot way, but when he does, it is actually kind of curated. It's not like throwing spaghetti at the wall just to take your money. It is kind of like, because he comes very much from a music fan point of view, as do I. It's like, he's kind of like, see, in the same way, I'll collect out, Beatles bootlegs, up to a certain area, because I'm obsessive about. I want to hear that. I want to hear the mistakes, and I know there are people like that out there, about Rollins Band. So it was mostly for them. So, I'm happy to see it again, especially as it, like I say, it comes. It's not just like, here, buy this. It's the whole. If you're interested in this, then you might like this, and this. It's tailored.
I prefer the demos myself as well.
Yeah.
It's like a live show. It feels like a live show to me.
Yeah, and it was. I mean, those were done at what's the name of the studio? And I remember I never felt comfortable in that guy's studio, but again, the sounds were really good. But also, just speaking personally, I was just much more uptight, about, music performance and tone and timbre. Because you always, I don't know if it's the same for you, but for a lot of musicians, you've always got, you've always got the people, you've always got somebody looking over your shoulder, whether it's a psychological, Keith Richards or Robert Fripp. It's like, oh my God, it's not as good as Jimmy Page. So this is always a sense of inadequate disappointment, which at the age of 60, I'm starting to grow out of, maybe. Yeah, maybe,
Well, fast forward a couple years, the Rollins Band with the next album,
Yep.
Has a hit single.
Yep.
Things are kind of opening up for you guys.
Yep.
I would say that's, the commercial peak of the band was that point.
Yeah.
Around that time, you put out a very uncommercial record. Your first solo album,
Oh, come on, don't start like that. All my records are uncommercial. Not just the one. The start of a trend. Yeah, indeed. Language. Yeah.
My little mini review, and I mean this as a compliment, Chris. It's coming from me. Language, largely to me, sounds like a more together jam deck.
Yeah, okay, I can get that. No, my previous favorite review was a guy who said, this is what I reach for when I've run out of Trout Mask Replica. It's like,
there you go.
Okay, yeah, I mean, yes, it's right, because there was no off switch. I mean, I'm always somebody who's a kind of a victim of the competing and utterly incompatible aesthetics. So on the one hand, you've got Fred Frith, and on the other hand, you've got Robert Fripp, and then you've got, God knows what. I mean, again, it's got hours of tapes of trying to get Roland Howard to play, and it's just there was a whole bunch of stuff, and it made it kind of that album. Yeah, it's not easy listening. It's got a gestalt, but it doesn't have any. It has a gestalt with no components. I don't know how to describe it. I'm enormously proud of that record, but I can't get back in the headspace that produced it. And it's like, remember, I don't take drugs. That was just completely natural, right? It's like that record. People go, man, you must have been out of it. It's like, no, this is what the inside of my head actually sounds like. Sorry,
How did Roland get involved in?
Oh well, that was. It's funny actually, because it's a couple of times this has happened where, and this is one of the few benefits of living in. No, take that back. One of the benefits of living in Australia is I get to I hang out with Mick Harvey a lot. He lives down in Melbourne. He's up here a lot, and he's still a delightful human being. But the first time I saw the birthday party was a life-changing experience for me, right? That would have been, I think, 82 or 83, and it was like, it was frightening. Right? There's not many concerts I've been to where I would use the word fear in relation to what was happening on stage, and there are very few concerts that I remember that clearly. One of the other ones actually is seeing Gang of Four for the first time. Watching Andy Gill with Gang of Four completely shattered my notion of guitar playing, right? Which fit perfectly into what we were doing in the Enzymes. And watching Roland Howard, and just actually it was the entirety of the birthday party. I didn't really focus so much on Roland per se that day, but then I went back and started listening to the records even more because it's part of what was just everybody was listening to. Just being completely not obsessed, but engrossed in like this. There was more like you hear something and you kind of go, that's somebody I have to meet.
Right.
Whoever did that, I want to talk to him or her. And so I got in touch, under the pretext of like, hey, can we get together? We could talk into a tape recorder. I'll see if I can sell it as an interview to NME. Right. It wasn't like I'm a journalist, I'm doing this. It was just, hey, I'm going to do this. Let's see if we can get it to work. And there was totally a pretext to go to his house and just talk for hours about guitars. And then we did that. And I used to kind of go around and, gosh, the words squalid poverty don't even really do it justice. But I used to go around to their house, to their flat, and, accidentally on purpose leave my groceries behind, and just hang out, because it's like, gosh, I mean, with Roland Howard, you could just go on and on. I mean, he had this aura of like deserving royalty in exile, right? So it's kind of like you felt like he was like, like he somehow he always deserved better than wherever he was, and he probably did, but it was this thing you just kind of felt compelled to like, let me get you a cigarette. And so then we became friends. I don't know what on earth he thought of me, but we did get to hang out. And I used to coax him to come over to a friend of mine's place when I was in London, and with an acoustic guitar, and we would just record. And sometimes I have some ideas for him and say, hey, let's play this, and sometimes it would. And but to be totally honest, it always had to be, if you wanted him to actually show up, there had to be like, hey, and I can give you 10 pounds. There had to be some, because otherwise there were more important places for him to be. I'm not trying to make it sound like he was a mercenary dick, because he wasn't. But it was kind of like you really needed to compete for his attention. And so out of the 4 or 5 hours of recording that we did, that was probably out of 20 or 30 scheduled appointments. I mean, it's kind of like, it was like pulling teeth. And so anyway, but that's, but he again, just, he had no, I don't think he had any idea why his music hooked people the way it did. And I remember him saying at one point, he was listening to, like, I don't remember what it was, like, it wasn't Fairport Convention, but it was, or Joan Baez. It was something completely anomalous. You'd kind of go, you like this? And he said something, and it wasn't Fairport Convention of Joan Baez, but it was something equally florid, right? Florid. And he said, yeah, I mean, this is what I always try and play like. It just comes out like that.
Wow. Wow.
But that accounts for the affinity with the Lee Hazelwood stuff, which I never got. I was like, why are you guys playing this? Because he loved that kind of like florid songwriting, but it just comes out like that. So but so that's how I kind of got him into doing stuff. And he actually came and sat in with us. I think the first time we played in Melbourne, he came and played with us at the Greek once, which was fun. And I used to see him sporadically thereafter.
With the Rollins Band, he sat in?
Yeah, he came and I can't remember what we played. Maybe just, I have no idea. You have to ask Henry. He'd remember. I don't remember what it was. Yeah. So anyway, but yeah, so the language record is a strange. It is one of those things you put on when you want people to leave your party. I mean, I'm not ashamed of it. That's just what it is. It's kind of like, but the only thing I took off, I've re-released it because I took the Ives piece off because I wasn't sure whether it was still in copyright or not. There was a version of the unanswered question using nothing but shaking guitar, but I think that must be out of date by now, so I should be able to put that back on. But
yeah, it's a great record. I've been listening to it again, leading up to this interview, and
yep, you look okay.
I'm all right. All right.
You survived. Actually, and also I should say I do have on my checklist of like endless projects yet to finish, one of which is I have all the other stuff that Roland and I recorded, which some of it's, it's a curate's egg, some of it's rotten, some of it's really good, and I want to winnow it down, maybe edit it. And what I really want to do actually is there's a version, he and I did an acoustic angularized version of the Rolling Stones Dancing with Mr. D, with the idea that we were going to get Lydia to do a spoken word on the vocal for it. And I contacted her about a year ago. And she said she was interested, and then I never heard from her again. So someday, I think she's going to be here in the spring, and I'll nag her about it again. So it'd be cool. Part of me just wants to finish that off because it's like one of the few things that we actually worked on quite coherently together. I didn't have to drag him along. And it actually had a coherent actual end piece. It was like, we get Lydia to do it, right? And so that would be nice. It would be nice to cap that off, because I find that all these unfinished projects really weigh on me,
Yeah, it would. I mean, the world needs as much Roland as possible,
Yeah, I mean, it's true. And I would encourage anybody who's watching this who has not heard Teenage Snuff Film to go and buy that record, because it is an unrecognized masterpiece. And also hats off to Mick Harvey for pulling that out of Roland. I mean, he wasn't easy to work with either. So yeah, so that's, there you go. That's your homework, kids.
Right on. There's a ton of other artists you worked with over the years. We can probably do an entire series on each of them. But there's a couple I wanted to definitely hit on. The first one being, because my two favorite all-time Bowie albums are actually Low and the one you play on, Hours.
Really?
I love that record. Everything but the first song. The rest of the record I think is amazing.
Oh, cool.
Actually,
my favorite song from that session was the B-side to Thursday Child, which We All Go Through. It was actually, I think, one of the, but David apparently didn't like it that much. I loved it because it was totally psychedelic. But anyway, so yeah, I thought Hours was kind of the ongoing continuation to Hunky Dory in some ways. But anyway, sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh, it's a totally overlooked masterpiece, in my opinion. I think it was what, it was probably the best thing he had done since Tin Machine at that point. And I got to tell you, I think it may be my favorite Bowie album of like the latter years, for
Right. I don't know. I'm kind of with you. I mean, I think Earthling is quite was incredibly bold. I got to. I think just that, to take that was it. That was a bold. That was as bold a step to take, I think, as he had ever done in a lot of ways. But anyway, sorry. But so you like, yeah, okay.
Well, how did you land that one?
Well, there we go. So this goes back to how things tailing off. So when Rollins Band used to go hang out in Europe, when we go tour in Europe, right? We'd run into the Bad Seeds all the time, and um, you know, Henry and Nick would always go off and hang out together. And at one, and Roland would often come to the Bad Seeds shows, even though it wasn't placed. So basically, the way it works, like out of the birthday party, Detroitus, I ended up with the guitar player, and Henry ended up with the singer. Which is how it works. So the first time I met Bowie and Reeves was on a festival in, I think, Finland. It was one of those places where, like, it was, the sun didn't go down till like 4 at night, and then it came back up at 7. It was something like that. But I think it was Finland. Anyway, so we're in the backstage area, and Bowie's one of the headliners, and we're kind of looking around, where is he? Where is he? Oh my God, there he is. And the short version is like, so we go over, and I say hi to David, and Henry wants to talk to David. David wants to talk to Henry. I want to go find Gabrels. Yeah, fine, Bowie, that's really cool, but where's Reeves Gabrels, right? So I go find Gabrels, and we're very similar in a lot of ways. So I mean, it's like, again, it was a similar thing. It was like Henry would go off with Nick, I'd go off with Roland or Mick Harvey. David goes off with Henry, I go off with Reeves. And the guitar players get to nerd out together. So the way that worked, so that would have been 96 or 97. And after I was no longer in Rollins Band, put it that way, I was in New York, and so I know my marriage was dissolving at the same time. So I left the band, and the marriage both ended at the same time. And obviously, well, not obviously, but like, I would have handled either one if I hadn't lost both, right? But I was basically kind of a mess. Reeves had just moved to New York. He was going through some things, and he was kind of a mess. And we were he was living, I think, at Astor Place, and I was living in the West Village. So we were like 5 blocks apart. I'm like, great, let's just hang out and be a big mess. So we did, and because he's a lovely guy. I mean, again, being aside from being able to play the pants off of anybody, we started hanging out, and we're just friends. And they were recording, and most of the time they were sometimes recording at Looking Glass over on Broadway, which isn't that far. And most of the album was made over at Chungking, right, which is on, I don't know if you knew how well you New York. It's on Varick Street. I lived right off of West Houston, so it was literally 400 yards from my house, from my apartment. So I used to kind of go around a lot, where Reeves would come around afterwards. And then they started sending me, but Reeves called me and said, hey, can you edit a DAT for us while we're doing it? So I'm like, yeah, sure. So I'd go pick up the DAT, bring it home, do some digital editing, bring it back, and became kind of a fixture. And started hanging out more, and just, as I say, if you hang out in a barbershop, eventually you get a haircut. So I'm at the studio almost every day, and it got to the point where, like, if Reeves if Reeves hadn't showed up at the studio, if he'd overslept, they'd call me to go get him, right? So and just kind of start being around, and they were working on new material and new thing. I remember going into the studio one day, and and Bowie had this kind of impish expression. I can't remember exactly how it worked, but he said, he was like, Chris, how'd you like to be in the band? I was like, well, let me think about that for a minute. It's like, so I got hired to be in a band that we were supposed to play a Millennium show in New Zealand. That was the thing. So, but then even by September, it was clear the whole thing was gonna implode, and the festival would not happen, and all the other gigs were anchored around that festival. So that little tour didn't happen, and that was just as Reeves was trying to, as politically and gracefully as he could, depart from the band. Right. So he brought me into the band, not to replace him. I actually had a different job. I couldn't do it. Maybe I could do those parts, but not like that. But it was, it was kind of like, it was an unfortunate maelstrom after he left, and there was a whole bunch of changes and different music director and different stuff. And I think, I got kind of caught up in the backwash of that. In the meantime, yeah, I did get to play on one song. I mean, because again, like, I feel it's kind of embarrassing. So like, people go, "Oh, you played with Bowie." I'm like, well, actually, I got to play badly on one song because Reeves created a situation where he decided, Reeves could have done those parts himself. He did. It was an act of enormous kindness. And maybe a way of also making David more comfortable with me. I don't know. But it was also the morning I had to, I got the call, like, he said, "Here, learn this song pretty much by tomorrow." I'm like, okay. And the song wasn't hard, but it was more, I can't remember what the technical expression, he needed to have irregularly spaced rests, right, in the middle of the song. So it had to be conducted. You couldn't do it to a click. And so it's like, okay, here, learn this. And it was some, like, I've got short, stubby fingers, right? This is a quick aside. When I got to shake hands with Sonny Chirac, the first thing I noticed was that he had hands like mine. And I remember being jealous, going, how does he do that with these fingers? But anyway, so Reeves has regular guitar player hands, right? And the chording for the song involved something that, my pinky just won't do, right? So I'm in there playing there, we get into that part, and I'm like, I'm sitting in the control room looking at Mark Plotty, hoping he's not going to glare at me. But we fixed it. It was okay. So I got to play on that one song, and which was really kind. And I got hired to do the tour, which didn't happen. But ever since then, it's been like, it's been like Harvey the Invisible Rabbit. This was the tour I never got to do. It's the gig I never got to play. People goes, "Oh, how's your Invisible Rabbit?" And I'm like, "I don't have an Invisible Rabbit." It's like, "You played with Bowie." It's like, "No, I didn't." I always go, "Have you ever heard of Stacey Hayden?" He'll go, "No." Yeah. Well, Stacey Hayden did one whole half of the Station to Station tour, right? So Stacey Hayden, very fine guitar player, played with David. I got to play I played badly on a song once with David, right? So, but it snowballed into this thing, and I'm really, chuffed I got to do it. It's really, nice, and and David taught me how to use eBay. I mean, that's the thing, is like, people go, you got to play with David. I'm like, yeah, that was okay, but we used to, but we watched C-SPAN together, and he showed me how to use eBay, right?
There you go.
It's like, that was it. I spent most of the day talking about you telling me about English 20th century English painting, discussing C-SPAN, and he was buying stuff on eBay. He used to have to go and time it. Like, "David, 1 minute." Oh yes, you do that last minute bid thing, But so that's my David story,
And we should
the Harvey tour.
We should let people know the song that you're on that album is "If I'm Dreaming My Life," which is wonderful song. Even though he's bad, I love it.
No, and it's quite. I don't, people. I don't know this. Other people have asked me if, if any of it was inspired by what I was going through at the time. I'm like, I don't know, but I've had friends go, "Dude, that's you." I'm like, no, I don't think so. I don't think David would have done that. I think he probably wrote it long beforehand. But but it is a cool song. It's one of the more interesting ones. But like I said, if you haven't checked out the B-side to Thursday's Child, it's like, I think it's lovely. I mean, it is very Summer of Love psychedelic. And it's got some really interesting vocal melodic turns, I think. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, I'll definitely check it out. So unfortunately, the Bowie gig became the Bowie non-gig.
Became Harvey the Rabbit. Yeah.
Yes, and your career trajectory kept climbing higher and higher beyond Bowie, and you landed in a band with me for a nanosecond,
Yeah.
Pigface
Yeah.
in 2001.
Yeah, actually, so it was actually, well, no, there's a couple of intervening ones. One of which is that I got the call, I got invited to do the Pigface gig while I was out with Foetus, right?
Oh,
So this is that's I have to credit Jim Thurwell with saving my life. Um, actually more Vinny, but because we were, I was, can't remember why, I don't know why, who couldn't do it, but the normal Foetus band, which was like Al Kizzy's and others couldn't do it for some reason, and Jim called me up, and they're like, okay, cool, I'd love to. I mean, who wouldn't want to play with Foetus? I mean, so anyway, so we'd rehearse, and I was really surprised I was not at how hard that music is, because I mean, you know, I'd had very few. I had some very memorable encounters with the pre-sobriety Jim. I had not had almost any contact with the sober Jim, right? So when I walk in, and it's like the Marine Corps. I mean, he's always been a very driven and passionate and very specific. He's got very clear ideas about what he wants to do. But I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready for the Marine Corps. I was like, oh, it'll be a Foetus gig. This will be, it's gonna be fun. It'll be a couple of chords, And I wasn't like, he's like, no, you played that fifth note wrong. So we got ready to go do a tour of Europe, which started on September 12th, 2001. Right. So September 12th. September 10th, we're flying out to go to Europe, right? And our flight gets canceled, or we get bumped off, and it's getting later and later, and by like 9:30, I'm like, you know what, fuck it, let's just go home, get on a flight tomorrow, right? And Vinny, the drummer, was like, no, I'm going to get us on a flight, and he did. He got us on a flight, some American Airlines thing, landing in Amsterdam. So we land in Amsterdam, and in like the afternoon, it was a red eye, an overnight red eye to Amsterdam. Couldn't even been a red eye. Actually, must have been landing in the afternoon. But anyway, we get to the baggage claim in Amsterdam, and somebody walks up and goes, "Hey, man, plane just hit the World Trade Center." And I'm thinking, okay, it's a Cessna, so what, And then as we're leaving the baggage claim with our bags and stuff, it's like, second plane just hit the World Trade Center. We're like, what the fuck? I had been in the World Trade Center on September the 9th. That's where I went to pick up my ticket, right? The chances are that the chances are high, because I only live a quarter mile from ground zero anyway. The chances are that, had we actually gone, listened to me and just gone, fuck it, let's go, we'll come back, we'll come back tomorrow, let's get on another flight. The chances are quite high that I would have actually already been, I would have gone to the United ticket terminal in the bottom of WT1, because that's where they had this like kind of semicircle of airline booths, right? So thanks, Vinny. But anyway, so I was out with Foetus in Europe when Martin called about coming out with Pigface. So sorry, that's the short preface as to how I ended up in Pigface. Yeah, that was also different,
Oh yeah. Uh-huh. A little bit.
a little bit. Actually, it was even more radically. It's funny because went from doing Foetus to doing Pigface to doing the Cassandra Complex. So I went through this as this weird avant rock guy. I went into this kind of industrial thing, and but yeah, I was, it's not my natural métier, it's not my, but it was super fun, you know. I just don't think I was a natural fit. It's not that not that I didn't like it, but it's like I can't do makeup and just wearing black thing. I just can't do it. It's just, I cared too little about what I look like. So I'd be out on stage at Pigface wearing my like Juventus shirt or whatever it was, and like smiling, and everybody's doing, and Charles Levi's, I'm like, hi. I'm not a very industrial guy.
Yeah, that's what's great about that photo that we're together in from the Limelight.
Yep.
You've seen
Yep.
that? Just like the girls from Bozo Porno Circus are
Yep.
dressed all like sexy, and
Yep.
you got Levi and the black, and you're just like, hey, you have like
Yeah. I'm kind of like, I'm not. I mean, I hope it didn't irritate Martin too much, but it's, just couldn't. It's yeah. It's just, I can't take how I look on stage seriously enough to ever make an effort about it. It's like, I'm sorry, I just can't do it. Um, but but it was a fun tour. Yeah, actually, and one, it's such great people. Who wouldn't? Nothing else. Who wouldn't want to be in a band with Connolly?
right.
Just one of the best human beings on earth. And it was cool. Yeah, that was a fun one. And I know it was nice to be back on a bus in America again. As well. Even that bus. you know, but
I'll tell you what, speaking of Pigface, talked to him on the phone last night. One of the next, if not the next interview for my YouTube, Levi.
oh, good. See, how's he doing? I was afraid to ask, but is he all right?
He's doing well,
Good.
spoke with him last night. Good spirits,
I'll
he's
send him my best because
yeah,
you never know. You never know you never know whether you should ask or not. No,
yeah,
that's cool.
yeah, he's been through a hell of a lot, man, but he's still here, so
Yeah,
and
well, that's awesome.
just, still the sweetheart he always was. And
Still in Chicago?
he's out in Colorado these
Oh,
days.
is he? Okay, all right.
Yeah. So we're gonna do one of these probably in a
Yeah,
few
yeah.
months. So I'm really
But not
psyched.
at 1:30 in the morning for you. No. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Hopefully not. And
Sorry,
not
I should make my answers shorter so you can go to sleep.
well,
Um,
it's all good, but I definitely wanted to talk a little bit about the here and now, of course.
yep,
You
yep.
do have a new
Hold on,
project.
I'm back. That's all right. What? What? Yes. Yeah. Sorry about that. It's like the cat that rushes in during the CNN interview. Um, yes, the here and now. Yes, I'm in Australia. I'm in a band with Australians.
And that
Which
would
is
be
cool.
Even Odd, the new
That would
band.
be Even Odd. Even Odd. It's like it wasn't my first choice of a name, but it was the least bad name we could all agree on. And so the excuse me. There you go. So Even Odd. So I have a good friend down here, a journalist, a guy called Murray Engelhart, who I've known since Rollins Band days. And Murray's great. He's actually written some really great books on Australian rock, including like Blood, Sweat, and Beers, which is like the pub scene, and Rose Tattoo. I think he wrote the definitive book on AC/DC, the authorized one. Anyway, a guy called Murray Engelhart, very good, lovely man. And I remember being on the phone to him going like, look, why is it so complicated? I just want to start a band which meshes television with the Dead playing Darkstar. I mean, who doesn't? Of course, right? And Murray was like, hold my beer. It was like 5 minutes. 5 minutes later, it's like, call this guy. And the number he gave me was for another guitar player, which is unusual because I don't usually play with another guitar player. A lovely man by the name of Bob Spencer. He used to be in a band down here called Skyhooks. And then he was in the Angels.
Oh, sure. Yeah,
And
yeah.
he's been a journeyman with so many Australian bands. And he was in Rose Tattoo, but he got out of that. And we met up and had coffee, and I said, here's what I want to do. I want to do, I want to do a 73 Dark Star with Tom Verlaine on the lead, and he was like, I get that. I was like, cool. Instrumental. He's like, yep, no vocalist. So we have Bob and I are playing guitars. We have a rhythm section from a band called Mentalist Anything. And it's a work in progress. It's pretty cool. I mean, like I said, that attempt to juxtapose the kind of angularity of somebody like Richard Thompson or Tom Verlaine, but keep it melodic. It's an interesting kind of what's the word? Kind of, I guess, meeting point for a number of different aesthetics. What I'm trying to mesh is kind of the guy. Give me just somebody else said it better than me. Guy walked up to me at the end of a show, because we've been playing just some shows just to feel out, see what material works, see what doesn't, just little shows here and there. Guy comes up to me at the end of the show and he goes, you guys sound like a King Crimson meets the Meat Puppets. I went, yes. I felt seen, right? So the band is called Even Odd, and we are going to do our first, we're going to probably just do an EP really soon. We're going to do some recording, hopefully have that out pretty soon. I don't even know what putting a record out means anymore. I still feel like I have to have some kind of physical, tangible product in order to make it feel real. So we're probably just going to we're going to save up until we can do vinyl. And hopefully that'll keep going. That's, the other thing is also like, look, I'm going to be 62 in like 2 weeks. I don't want to go do what I did when I was 18. It's like, I'm nothing against it, but I'm a different person. I want to do something that doesn't feel, never mind looking ridiculous. I don't want to feel ridiculous. I want to do something that is really appeals to me for who I am now. This is something like I can, this is something I can get old doing, you know what I mean? And it still challenges me, and it just maps more to, because I mean, it would have been, people go, oh, you should get a singer. I'm like, no, I shouldn't. I should not get a singer. And I think Bob feels sort of the same way. And yeah, it's just cool. So hopefully it'll work. Hopefully it'll take off. I mean, Australia is a small place, and it's a hard place to do something like this. So I think the idea is in the longer run to look more to Europe and to maybe to Japan. I mean, I don't know how it would go over in the States. Oddly enough, again, it appeals to Deadheads. It's this really weird blend of there's a couple of like Dead tribute bands in Sydney. They're okay. I don't go in for Dead tribute bands. I like the Dead up to about 77. And after that, not so much. But I mean, but the point is, their folks get it. This is why I like it. They come because with Even Odd, we actually do quite a bit of improvisation, very, very often jamming from one song into another, which means that the set, sometimes, people don't get to come up for air for like 25 minutes. But, you'll every once in a while come across somebody wearing an Moxoa shirt, and they're like, that was really cool. Like, oh, you understand, right? And so, but the number of places in the world where you can go away and do that is fairly limited. I mean, the other people that really get it, actually, I've noticed at our shows, again, like I said, we've only been doing shows just to road test material. It's not to really, what's the word? Not to launch yet. But like that whole San Diego Earthless, right? Those bands, the people that are into like Earthless really get it as well. It's a number of like that kind of thing who will stand still for 27 minutes of the same riff. They're like, we don't play that, but they're willing to stand still for it, and they get it. They don't always like it, but at least they get it. So I think, like I say, Even Odd, it's going to be a hard sell down here, but hopefully we'll be able to come up and play maybe up there. Definitely probably Europe, maybe Japan, if we're lucky. So yeah, so look for a release. Gosh, hopefully May. It depends. I mean, we'll put it out digitally before we put it out, because vinyl, the wait time is so high,
right?
That it will be available. I'll let you know. In fact, I'll foist a copy on you.
Awesome.
We do have a cassette. We've got a cassette somewhere. Or a cassette. Yeah.
Nice. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, well, that's what it looks like upside down. This is the real thing. Yeah, because again, it's so ironic. It's so weird having grown up in the 70s and now having things like cassette come back. People going, you know what you should do? You put out a freebie cassette and you give it away at gigs and you put it in the record stores for people to give to the customers that they know. I'm like, really? Cassette? Ew. But it's true. Like, okay. So
That's cool. Yeah, I can't wait to hear it, man.
oh well, you know, do you have a cassette deck?
Yeah.
Okay, send me your address.
Oh yeah, right on. Thanks, man. That's awesome.
You know, yeah. But you should go to bed. What else you got?
Well, actually, as we wrap up,
Mhm.
I know you've got a ton of different recordings up on your Bandcamp. So I know that's a good place to send people
Yep.
to. I'll put that
Yeah,
address in the video. Do you have an official website as well and other ways?
I do, but I mean, I'm so even Odd has an official website. Even I even has an official like Facebook thing. But it's like I'm not of the generation that is obsessively able to produce content. So
Mhm.
like my website, you know, I'm like, oh yeah, I have a website. I should every 6 months I should go, you know, and just I do have a website, the Bandcamp page, or I've also have a Facebook music page. I'm easy to find. I mean, but yeah, the Even Odd Facebook is easy to find. There's a bunch of videos up on YouTube. Again, also linked from the various pages. Bandcamp is good. I mean, like I said, and I do actually have. There's another record in the works. Actually, I've been, which we didn't even well, very briefly tell you about. There's a record I've been working on of nothing but covers for about 10 years. Unfortunately, it's just taken me this long to get it done. At the moment, the working title is Partly Uncovered and Shameless. And it's nothing. It's all again all instrumental, and it's got what's it got on it? Whose songs have I stolen? Sonny Rollins, Thelonious Monk, Ronnie Montrose, Vernon Reid, an unreleased Led Zeppelin jam from a bootleg, two Grateful Dead tunes, one of which done as bebop. You know, as you do, you know, so that hopefully I'm like one saxophone solo edit away from having that be finished. And then I send all my stuff. I still work with Peter Raab, who helped work on Weight with Theo Van Einbergen, and he still mixes all my stuff. So I send it to him in Eindhoven, and he mixes it, and then hopefully that record will finally, you know, and then my shoulders will go up like this. It's like it's been weighing me down for a long time. So hopefully that will also be out soon. So let me see something. Montrose, Vernon, Zeppelin, Dead. Oh, there's a Sonny Schrock tune on there. There's a Sun Ra tune on there. The two Dead tunes. God, it's been so long, I can't remember what's on it anymore. But anyway, so that will also be out at some point on the Bandcamp page. But as I was getting at, it was like, as I get older, I think I get a little bit better at self-editing. So I think like of the records there, the most user-friendly one is the last one, is Insufficient Necessities. You know, we didn't even touch on Percy Jones. You know, we didn't talk about that one yet. But,
Well, we'll have to do a part two.
Then I can talk more. Then I can really talk.
We'll have to do a part two when I'm on vacation. I have to work the next day, so we can go
Yeah.
off.
Oh, yeah. Sorry about this. But anyway, I'll let you go. But is there anything else that you need me to verbalize about?
I think we're good. I will put up a few of the links you mentioned when I post this.
Yep.
And yeah, let's do a part two for sure, for real. And you know, when the next couple records come out, we'll reconnect.
That would be really great. And I it's been so much fun that I'm doubtful to whether I should apologize for having so much fun. But sorry for keeping you up so late. I'm glad your electricity's back on. It would have been a much shorter interview.
Yeah, yeah. Well, winter New England is a very unpredictable.
It would have been more concise, you know. So
Yes.
anyway, look, go to bed.
Yeah, and seriously, let's do a part two. Let's not wait
I'd
20
love to.
years.
I'd love to. Once I finish the next two records, I'd love to. Please send my best to Charles Levi. And yeah, say hi to Martin next time you talk to him.
Definitely, definitely.
Okay, cool. All right, and yeah, and I will call Andrew.
Cool. Yeah, tell him I said hello.
I will indeed. All right, take care. I'm gonna go.
You too, man. Bye-bye.